I have written about and spoken about ego before. I've written about and spoken about violence before. I've written about mystics and mysticism. But today I'm connecting the dots. Welcome to Calm in the Chaos Interfaith Center. When you hear a person described as a mystic, what comes to mind? Give it a minute and picture this. Go ahead. Is it a person who has withdrawn from public life and lives alone like a hermit? Is it a person who spends days in prayer and meditation and perhaps yoga and has no concern for the world and its daily ongoings? Or do you picture a person who uses their deep and insightful abilities to take action, to physically, financially, emotionally commit to righting the wrongs of the world? Dorothée Sewell, who died in 2003, was such an activist. She was a theologian who wrote a book called The Silent Cry: Mysticism and Resistance. Her feeling, which resonates deeply with me, is that mystics must use their wisdom to be in the world and to do something to heal its ills. Sort of like a Buddhist bodhisattva. She did not renounce the world and choose a solo monastic life for her own edification, but rather stayed in the world and acted bravely and boldly. Now, I'm guessing that she didn't look like what most people thought as a mystic. No flowy robe, no long gray hair, no far off gaze. No, she was every bit a spiritual warrior in society, not absent from it. Now, I wholeheartedly agree with separation of church and state when the church imposes its wishes onto everyone in a community. Here's an example. Even though a similar law was deemed unconstitutional in Louisiana, both houses in Texas recently passed a bill that requires every public school classroom to post the Ten Commandments beginning September 1st of this year. Ironically, the bill was passed, which meant all of the lawmakers were working on a Saturday, which is the Jewish Sabbath. Commandment number 4 says to keep the Sabbath day holy as a rest day, no work. At this point, Governor Abbott is fully expected to sign the bill into law. This is a huge violation of separation of church and state. When a church, an organized group of people feeling the same way about an issue that includes God or the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, the Torah, Muhammad, Krishna, tries to impose that feeling or belief on others in a school or government building or a public platform, it's wrong. James Tallarico, Texas lawmaker, just said to fellow Christian colleagues, don't let the law get in the way of loving your neighbor. Our neighbor also includes a Hindu student who sits in the classroom, a Buddhist student who sits in the classroom, and an atheist student who sits in the classroom. So I say all of this to distinguish the church state issue from my next statement, which is that I believe many, many issues are both political and religious. Acknowledging that helps me to see clearly how to respond to an issue. My faith guides me as to my stand on issues, how to vote, when and how to speak, and when to take further action. I believe as a fledgling mystic, I cannot divorce politics from my religion. My beliefs inform me how to proceed but I will not impose what I know as my truth on you. I respect that we may have differing points of view. My religion is love. My faith path is guided by great spiritual leaders' wisdom over the years, and I am on a path to free myself from the three things that all mystics must attempt to leave behind: allowing ego's great sense of inflation to override humility, putting great value in material possessions, and responding with violence to any stimulus. Let's return to Dorothée Sewell. She knew that many of us in Western cultures have been raised to live a life that is focused on individualism. This is antithetical to the concept of Ubuntu, where people stand with one another, stand up for one another, and know that an individual cannot be happy in a vacuum. Dorothée knew that we had to learn to rise above our egos, or at least learn to identify when ego is speaking or raising its head for attention, so we can develop strategies for reducing its power over us. Only then can we see a bigger picture, a village picture, a global picture. Only then can we truly see how each of us is but one spoke of the wheel in the natural world, and we are meant to live in harmony with the rest of the spokes so the wheel can be balanced and turn properly. Another lesson we can learn from Dorothée is that of action-oriented faith. If we think the definition of following a religion is sitting in a pew every weekend and praying before meals, we are missing the point. Perhaps you were recently at a gathering where people were protesting the current regime in power. Maybe you held a sign overhead. Maybe you were afraid or unsure, but you were there doing something. Now, I don't often use the word sin because of its torqued meaning of some egregious act carried out by someone. Sinning can look like not doing something that's required of us as well. It can do that every bit as it means doing something heinous that harms relationships. By the way, the word sin came from a Greek archer's term, hamartia, which meant to miss the mark. It was translated as the word sin, and people began assigning it to morals and judgments, not just an archer's target. Back to Dorothée. She believed that religious people have an obligation to put their faith into action. Here's where I'll refer back to the difference between church and state and the religious politics argument. I vote no for the 10 Commandments being posted in public schools. I vote yes for my belief in welcoming the stranger. The first is where church and state should not marry. The second is where religion and politics most definitely share space in my heart. The first is ego talking, egos of the lawmakers thinking their religion is the only one of value. The second is a person trying to see a bigger picture, a view that may put the person in danger with the current administration, but rising above to a spiritual place of doing what she believes is required as a child of God. And the big point is that I will not impose my welcoming the stranger feelings and beliefs onto you or anyone else. And the lawmakers are imposing their religion onto every child who attends public schools. Dorothée Sewell said that religion has a social responsibility. She became one of the Cold War's leading anti-nuclear voices, a dedicated opponent of the United States' involvement in Vietnam and in Soviet-style communism. Dorothée was a mystic and a theologian, an activist, and a Christian. The final point of what a person must attempt to give up on the path to becoming a mystic is to not respond with violence. Now, when I think about this, I tend to see a Gandhi-like person, a Dalai Lama perhaps, a person who in modern terms may be called a bleeding heart. But that's a narrow view. A person who denounces violence need not shy from anger. How we feel and how we respond to the feelings are two different things. We are humans who can feel anger at child abuse and at the threat of Medicaid being closed. But as people who are striving to rise above the fray and find solutions, we're not choosing violence as a response. Mystics like Dorothée Sewell live among us and may even be us. Mystics see a big picture, striving to avoid the easy black and white way of thinking, knowing that most issues and their solutions are very complex and lie in the gray areas. Mystics are nonviolent. Mystics keep ego in its rightful place. Mystics use their wisdom to move forward in creating harmony among people and in cultivating respect for plants and animals. And this week, I will go so far as to say that on Thursday, June 19th, a national holiday needs to be recognized and celebrated more than ever by mystics and by all of us. One glaring example of politics and religion walking side by side occurred this week in anticipation of yesterday's celebration in our nation's capital, even as she quoted that our president, and I quote, is very proud to be a president for all Americans, regardless of race, religion, or creed, unquote. Our president's press secretary assured us that the president had no plans to recognize June as Pride Month. And our education department announced that June would be further known as Title IX Month, as it simultaneously attempts to undo a precious ruling that protected transgender people. We have also heard nothing about celebrations on Juneteenth. This knowledge is all inconsistent with what we know is needed to rebuild a peaceful world. Will there always be people who are oppressed by governments and regimes? Probably. Will there always be a need for us to join together and resist evil? Yes. Juneteenth is a commemorative day to remember the end of the struggles, the oppression, the terrors of the people of African descent who were forcefully ripped from their homes, carried across the sea to be sold to white landowners as human property. We must write school's history curriculum to tell the story because it's our human story. To identify the characteristics of people in power and to learn how that power can abuse others is to grow toward building harmony among us. To enjoy power and wealth and step on others as we climb the ladder of success is to allow ego and greed to run our lives. Juneteenth is this country's second Independence Day, and to not celebrate it with all the fanfare of the 4th of July is to continue the division of races. With leaders who are using their political muscles to pull us apart from one another, we, the people, must resist by showing up for one another. I continue to be called to love my neighbor, but like Dorothée Sewell, I know believing isn't enough. I'm called to do something. And so are you. Blessings on all. As a meditation today, let me share the credo written by Dorothée Sewell, what she believed. I believe in God, who created the world not ready-made, like a thing that must forever stay what it is, who does not govern according to eternal laws that have perpetual validity, nor according to natural orders of poor and rich, experts and ignoramuses, people who dominate and people subjected. I believe in God who desires the counter argument of the living and the alteration of every condition through our work, through our politics. I believe in Jesus Christ who was right when he, quote, as an individual who can't do anything, unquote, just like us, worked to alter every condition and came to grief in doing so. Looking to him, I discern how our intelligence is crippled, our imagination suffocates, and our exertion is in vain because we do not live as he did. Every day I am afraid that he died for nothing because he's buried in our churches, because we've betrayed his revolution in our obedience to and fear of the authorities. I believe in Jesus Christ who is resurrected into our life so that we shall be free from prejudice and presumptuousness, from fear and hate, and push his revolution onward and toward his reign. I believe in the Spirit who came into the world with Jesus, in the communion of all peoples and our responsibility for what will become of our earth. A valley of tears, hunger, and violence, or the city of God. I believe in the just peace that can be created, in the possibility of meaningful life for all mankind, and in the future of this world of God. Amen.